Mr. Rajapaksa, thank you very much. Thank you very much for talking to Thanthi TV. Ai Bhavan.
Vanakkam.
The last 1 year must have been very challenging for you, your family, and your country as well.
I mean, see, it has been a very tough period because when our president Gotabaya Rajapaksa took over the government, it was not in the status where President Rajapaksa handed over in 2015 to President Sirisena. Unfortunately, the economic growth has dropped, unemployment rates have gone up, and the interest rates have gone up. And the national security issues were there, and economy was anyway in stable situation. But at the same time,
You would blame the Sirisena government for that.
see, predominantly yes, I would say, because when President Rajapaksa handed over the government, it was 6.5% economic growth, and we had 8 billion foreign reserves, and at the same time, unemployment rate was single digit, and interest rates were single digit. But when President Gotabaya Rajapaksa had to take over, not only that, the President Sirisena's government has lent at 12.5 billion ISB loans at that time, where President Gotabaya Rajapaksa had to repay most of them during the COVID-19 pandemic. And I would say the economic situation, economy was not stimulated as it was during President Mahinda Rajapaksa's government. And as a result, the unemployment rates have gone up at that time. The interest rates have gone up. So President Gotabaya Rajapaksa, once he took over, he had to face many challenges, I would say. This is before COVID-19. And then the COVID-19 pandemic.
The assessment also is he made some wrong economic choices.
Well, I would say he took certain decisions based on the interests of the people of Sri Lanka at that time, especially cutting down interest rates. As you know, the amount of people who pay taxes are very low in our country. So even if you introduce new taxes, it will be the same people who are going to be burdened on the new taxes. So what President Gotabaya Rajapaksa wanted to do at that time, his intention was to make sure that the local investors given a tax concession to come out of the recession and reinvest that back on the economy. And I would say that he should have changed the policy once the COVID-19 pandemic.
Decisions such as going to organic farming at a massive level.
Well, I mean, I'm a person who was disapproving that, even while being in his government, because I personally thought it would have been spread the time for it would have been a project that was introduced in a period of 10 years time, and yet I believe
It was rushed, you feel?
it was not only rushed, and I don't believe, I personally don't believe, and I think it's very hard to make it 100% organic, because see, the first interest should be self-sufficient in the agriculture, to be self-sufficient for local people in Sri Lanka. Then look at the export market, and if you look at the organic market, is purely the Western or the European market, and you can look at the exports as the second stage. But first challenge for us is to make sure that we are self-sufficient on certain food items in Sri Lanka, so that we won't have food shortage. So that decision, probably he took it with good intention, because there are many diseases or health issues that were taken up by the health sector, and a lot of people, environment organizations, about the water pollution and the damage that happened to the soil in the country. But I think that was a wrong move, or I would say a right move taken at the wrong time.
A well-intentioned wrong move at a wrong time.
Well-intentioned wrong move at the wrong time. And with all this, the challenge and the part that we lacked was adapting to the COVID-19 situation. We managed it well, we did the vaccination program well, but unfortunately the people who ran the economy, based on the advice on the economy, did not read the economic impact that would happen post-COVID.
Sri Lanka is progressing well now. It's been more than 1 year since the crisis has passed.
Definitely we are happy the way it is now, up to a certain extent, because it's stable, and that is the first step moving forward. But at the same time, certain policies that has been implemented in order to make it stable is not reflecting well on the masses, especially the daily income earners, farmers, the fishing community, and the vulnerable community. So eventually the unemployment rate has hit 26% as to the latest reports that we have received. I mean, subject to small, it might vary 1 or 2 percentages, but eventually we are looking at about 26% unemployment rate.
The inflation is impressively down.
Inflation is down up to in certain areas, but the question is whether it's the numbers that we're looking at or the ground situation we're looking at.
You think the ground situation is different?
I think the income has dropped up to a certain tremendously. So even though the inflation is down at this stage, the majority of the people are suffering and then they are finding it difficult to survive.
Is it safe to say your economy is stabilizing but not
Of course,
growing?
I would say it's stabilized, and government can make it grow just based on few policy changes. And as the ruling party SLPP, we are pressurizing, we are pressuring the current government as the party that represents the majority of the government.
This government is a strange creature.
Well, after you can't expect much better, nothing better out of a Aragali or a revolution.
Economic crisis might be behind you, but is the political crisis so?
See, it's up to us. I mean, we are strongly committed to make sure that the political stability remains in the country. So, the Aragalia or the revolution they call themselves was the end result would have been a non-democratical government. But as SLPP, we stood by our policies and our people are vote based, and we made sure that the power transition happens on the democratical process according to the constitution. And that's how President Vikramasinghe became the president. And we stand by the government. And we, of course, there are certain policy differences between President Vikramasinghe's government and us. But we push much as we can to make sure that our policies are protected and it's implemented on the ground level. But at the same time, we believe it is our responsibility to have political stability, because with economic stability, having political stability will allow more investors to come in, and that will let the tourism sector to grow. So eventually, the economy will start moving forward.
Right. The protesters, the revolution held your family accountable. Do you think that was fair or they singled you out?
See, I would say it's not fair when you look at the facts and reality. But from their point of view, it was Gotabaya Rajapaksa who was in office. So you can't blame anyone else other than the person who is in office. I mean, that's how the world works. I mean, you can't blame.
Just not him, your entire family were in power.
See, that's how they blame it, right? I mean, that's how it happens. But eventually, no one talks about what happened in the past. No one is talking about 2015 and 2020 during President Sirisena's time. No one is concerned about $12.5 billion that were raised by ISBs. And at the same, no one is questioning what happened to them. How did they spend? What is the repayment plan on those funding? Because whatever money that has been lended during President Mahinda Rajapaksa's time, we have the highways, we have ports, aviation, industrial zones, hospitals, schools, and which we managed to double our per capita income at that time. We had 6.7%, 5 to 6.5% to 7% economic growth. Inflation was on single digit, interest rates were on single digit, unemployment at a single digit. Highest number of foreign investment at that time came into Sri Lanka. The shipping industry grew as a transshipment hub in South Asia. So we have
This was when Mr. Mahinda was the president.
Yes, during between 2005 to 15, and at the same time we managed to eradicate terrorism from this country during his leadership. With his leadership, he managed to eradicate terrorism, bring peace, connect north and east, and for the first time in Sri Lankan history, northern economy got more than $2 billion in investments. Railway, Indian government helped us to build the railway. Then the A9 road was built, hospitals were built, schools were built, and the industrial zones were taken to north and east. The agriculture sector started booming in the north and east, and we were self-sufficient in rice, corn, and we managed to export corn at that time.
That's why you were continuously re-elected. But in 2015, you were ousted of the office. The allegation was your regime turned very authoritarian.
See, I mean, it was a planned campaign at that time, and I would say we lost the campaign. I mean, we did not manage to address most of the allegations that were pointed at us. But eventually, once President Sirisena's and Vikramasinghe's government came into office, they investigated us. And today, President Vikramasinghe says in Parliament that the allegation against us having foreign accounts is not there anymore, because they couldn't find any evidence. And there is no authentic evidence to prove that. And President Sirisena himself says in media that Rajapaksas were freed from during his government from courts. So there were allegations, and we must admit from our side that we did not address it correctly because we were more worried and concentrate. We were more concentrating on the economic development and infrastructure development of the country rather than addressing certain political allegations. But that backfired to us back in 2015.
Talking about the economic and political crisis, how did your government respond? Do you think President Gotabaya Rajapaksa should have left the country so soon, or was it the right thing to do?
I don't think I personally believe he did the wrong move by leaving the country because you get elected by your people, and if people want to change you, it has to be on a democratic process. It has to be on democratic process. It has to be
The
based on.
protesters called it democracy on the streets.
Well, if that's what you call democracy, then why do you need elections? Any government can any opposition can bring their people to street and outset the existing president, because you don't forget that when President Gotabaya Rajapaksa took 52%, 48% voted against him, and that is democracy. And democracy is not forcing burning houses of your opponent and asking them to leave the office. And this is not the first time we have faced this, and this is not the first time Sri Lanka has faced.
Was it testing for you?
For me, yes. And my father has gone through them. I mean, he has faced these kind of similar challenges in the past. When he was elected to parliament in 1970, he has seen 83 riots, he has seen 88 riots, and he saw LTT, and he eradicated LTT. And now now the 2022 riots in Colombo.
How did he find this different?
From his perspective, I mean, he has seen similar uprising of youth in early 80s.
You found that no different? Manageable?
Yes, even myself, I don't see any difference. Because see, I'll tell you a sequence. I mean, if you look at LTT, it was a youth struggle that turned into a terrorist organization, which failed. And 83 riots failed. 88, 89 riots failed. And what is the outcome of the modern revolution? It's still a failure. It got elected on a democratic process, a president who had only one seat in parliament, and who has got only 25,000 votes in the country, became the president of the country because of the Aragale, or because of this revolution. And the most of the people who represent so-called non-political organizations, non-political individuals, are now being seen in the president's office, in cabinet ministers' offices, employed, and some of them are working with the opposition leader.
So you see a conspiracy here?
Definitely there is. There is conspiracy.
Local or global?
I think it's both. It's both.
Global as well.
Global as well.
Points to where? In which direction?
I don't want to point direction at anyone, but if you look at certain statements made by certain individuals or head of missions, you can definitely identify.
Mostly the Western missions?
See, Western missions, at one time they call elections as democracy, and next day they call revolutions as democracy. So it's how they interpret it. But I'm sure eventually with time, the people will realize. And now they have started to realize.
Do you see an Indian hand in there?
I don't see any hand in any government, but I would say there were certain organizations, I wouldn't say Indian organizations, but global organizations. And India was there to help us.
It was?
Yeah, because see,
how did India respond to the crisis? Maturely, or
I would
like
say,
the forces you have apprehensions about?
I would say India responded it much more than the IMF or any other organizations have done. Credit line for fuel purchasing was given by India at that time, $4 billion.
But about the political crisis?
See, I don't think India...
Do you think India interfered in some way?
I personally don't think so. I think India is much more mature, and they have a bigger political and geopolitical agenda at the moment. And India is the fifth largest economy.
Because the popular narrative is Rajapaksas and India don't get well.
Well, in the Western hand, it's the other way around, and West thinks Rajapaksas are more pro-India.
Because the general impression is you're so pro-China.
See, we are pro-Sri Lankan, and my father made the same statement with Indian media and Chinese media.
India is my brother and China is my friend.
Always, because see, it's our responsibility to look after our people, and I'm glad that the current president is taking the same stance, because it's good to see that the leadership of our country is more concerned about the interest of our people. If you want to build a port, airport, infrastructure, education, the first priority should be Sri Lankans and what benefit we get by becoming a global economic hub. And we need partners. We need Indian partners. We need Chinese partners. We need European partners. They can come and be partner in progress.
One popular narrative is you have become a victim of it. You are a victim of China's debt trap diplomacy. This is a popular narrative, very famous across the world. You're a classic example of China's debt trap diplomacy.
Well, that's a Western narrative, I think. And
There's no substance to it.
I don't believe, because most of our debt comes from the West, not from China. Most of our investment comes from China, yes, and now India as well. Massive investments come from India as well to Sri Lanka. But if you look at debt as debt, it comes from the West.
How did China respond to the crisis? It could have been more helpful.
No, China has been very progressive, and just like India, and they have been closely working with the government even during the crisis. But it was India who came forward with the credit line to make sure that we reinstate our supply chain when it comes to electricity and then the fuel crisis.
How do you assess the state of India-Sri Lanka relations today? Because this has gone through various currents, various turbulent times, wonderful times, stable times, also difficult times. How would you explain the current phase of India-Sri Lanka relations?
I think that's why my father called India Sri Lanka is our relative. Relatives have ups and downs.
Yeah, correct.
More than friends. So now I think it's getting more stronger, and Sri Lanka, the current government also seeing India as a close ally and close partner in progress. And we see a lot of Indian tourists coming to Sri Lanka, a lot of Indian investments coming to Sri Lanka, and our common language, cricket, we have good understanding now, and things are moving forward. So I think it's all about the interest of our own nations.
You're so much into sports. Who's your favorite Indian cricketer, if there's any?
Well, there are quite a few. Tendulkar was my at that time. Then Yuvraj, of course, with his comeback, and he has been a great inspiration for all the sportsmen and women in the world.
Right now?
I think Rohit Sharma, Kohli, Bumrah.
You also follow a lot of Indian films, Tamil films in particular, I suppose.
Well, yeah, I do watch Vijay's movies and.
You're a fan of him?
I'm a fan of Vijay. My father is a Rajinikanth fan.
He's a Rajini fan. I didn't know.
I mean, that's his generation, right? So
Right. He watches films.
We do watch, all of us.
What is his favorite Rajini film?
There are quite a few. There are quite a few movies. Shivaji was one of the.
A lot of foreign heads of state like Shivaji, I suppose. Malaysia's Anwar Ibrahim is a fan of Shivaji.
I think it's the content of the movie, right? So,
what Vijay films are you most impressed about?
Gilly was one of the ones that.
Gilly? You're a Vijay fan?
I'm a Vijay fan, and my father is a Talapati fan. So.
Bollywood? I understand you also watch a lot of Bollywood films.
I have quite a few friends there. I mean, Salman is a good friend of mine, and Jacqueline, a Sri Lankan actress, is there. Right. Yohani is based in Mumbai. So there are quite a few friends in that part of the world as well. So.
That part of the world, especially where I come from, the impression is you are anti-Tamil. I'm surprised that you like and follow Tamil films.
Well, look at my staff, most of them are Tamils and Muslims. I think that was a narrative that's built by LTT at that time, that Rajapaksas are anti-Tamil. But we are not. I mean, as I said, we are pro-Sri Lankan.
But some of your policies have definitely hurt Tamils, especially during the war.
Not policies. I mean, we had to fight with a terrorist organization.
That went too far?
Well, I wouldn't say it went too far, but it was interpreted in a different way. And of course, there is collateral damage we have to accept. But at the same time, we had the option of either giving to terrorism or fight against terrorism. So which we believe we did the right thing.
You call it collateral damage, but that's human rights violations.
Well, I mean, see, end of the day, what about LTT terrorism, having child soldiers, killing pregnant women, getting human bombs or human suicide carders to come and bomb themselves in name of freedom, right?
A nation state is expected to behave more responsibly, right?
We did, and we had a humanitarian operation. Our entire operation was based on humanitarian mission, and we had to sacrifice more soldiers to make sure that the lives of the civilians are saved. Because more Sinhalese soldiers died during the war trying to save most of the Tamil civilians.
Tamil civilians.
Of course. Our mission was to eradicate LTT, not Tamils.
90,000 war widows, some say it's more.
The numbers, of course, I don't know, because sometimes UN says 40,000, someone says 80,000, so it's different numbers. But end of the day, what my personal belief is that we need to move forward. And
You think Sri Lanka, especially on ethnic reconciliation, has?
see, I will say political reconciliation, no. Because
But at the ground level, are
ground
people,
level, the lives have picked up. Children are going to school. There are no more cyanides being hung on to their neck. And the weapons were taken back and given pencils and books to study. And we have doctors coming out of north now. We have engineers coming out of north. And we have entrepreneurs coming from north and east. And the ground situation is changing fast. Agriculture is picking up. Tourism is picking up in northern region. But at the same time, political reconciliation, no, because politician doesn't like that. And if they actually wanted reconciliation, they would have done that 20, 30 years ago.
why do you think you've been unable to win the trust of the Tamil populace? I'm going by the electoral results.
See, it's like, how do I put it? It's like Indian results when it comes to BJP and Tamil Nadu, right? SLPP is similar to BJP.
That's a very clever reply.
So I always tell my uncles, I always tell my party, the day BJP wins Tamil Nadu,
You will win North and East.
We will win North and East.
That's a very interesting comparison.
But that's reality, right?
Modi makes a lot of appeal to Tamil Nadu.
Even we do. My father
So
speaks
you have
in Tamil.
to, the Tamils in northern Sri
My
Lanka.
father speaks in Tamil. His staff is, most of them are Tamil. But yet the ballot paper doesn't reflect that. So eventually I think in the long
Why
run,
do you think it's a tough nut to crack? Because the wounds are deep or otherwise?
no, it's a culture. It's a culture because the Tamilian culture is more of a regional vote base. Political culture.
So you can live with it or you disappointed?
No, we are not disappointed. I mean, I think it's their right. And eventually, I'm sure generations to come, they believe in the national political system and they will vote for national political parties.
You think that is going to happen in North and East sometime?
Oh, of course.
In the future?
Oh,
Near
it
future?
has happened in the past. If you look at Sirima Bandaranaike, he won Jaffna. And Kobya Kadua, being a single East presidential candidate, he won Jaffna.
I see.
And Jaffna Municipal Council was first the mayor, Dorayappa, who was
Alfred
killed
Dorayappa. He was killed.
by LTT. And also he's from SLP politically. So I think we will eventually make them understand.
You're hopeful?
Of course.
About
I trust in them. I have faith, I have trust.
How about the national picture? Are you hopeful that SLPP will be the dominant force or will continue to be a dominant force at the national level?
SLPP will continue to be a dominant force. I mean, even up to now, we have restructured our party and we are regrouping, and also we are restructuring in the grassroots levels as well, reorganizing ourselves.
So I see you take a lead recently and make a lot of grassroots efforts.
My family's politics have always been with the grassroots, so I tend to continue that, and I enjoy it, and I like connecting with people with different communities, different ethnicity, different backgrounds, different economic backgrounds. So me reaching out to them on the grassroots level gives me a better picture as to what actually Sri Lanka needs moving forward.
Do you believe Mahinda Rajapaksa is as popular with the Sinhala masses as he used to be?
I think so.
They're not angry with him?
See, why do you get angry with someone if you love that person? You don't get angry with, I will not get angry with Prabhakaran because I don't love him, right? So if you like someone and if he lets you down, or his predecessor or his partner let you down, then you get hurt. So I think most of our vote base, we were hurt. Of course, we were hurt for many reasons. One, President Gotabaya Rajapaksa did not do politics. He was more concentrating on administration. Secondly, we expected him to do a lot of reforms. Unfortunately, maybe due to COVID, the reforms did not take place. And end of the day, because of Aragalaya, he left his office, which we believe he should have been there. And
have you expressed it to him? What is his rationale?
He had a different answer for this actually. I spoke to him. I personally had a long conversation with him, and I told him I will tell this on national media or international media one day. He had two choices: either protect the government but lead to a failed state, or protect the state and give up on the government. Because we have seen in the history where youth uprisings, especially early 80s, late 80s, how the government reacted on youth uprising. It ended up killing 60,000 Sinhalese youth by a southern government at that time. when we saw how LTT reacted, reformed or formed themselves and ended up killing 60,000 civilians, LTT cadres, soldiers, and we went on 30 years of war at that time. So he did not want a similar situation to happen in 2022.
Uh-huh.
So he decided at that time, I will not use force or violence, but I will let the democratic process elect someone else and step back. So I think from his perspective, fair enough.
How were those days like? You had a ringside view of your father and how things were managed and various suggestions coming in.
Firstly, we had a discussion among the family once everything broke out, and then said, let's be strong, let's face it. And in early 90s, my house was bombed, and my brother was only 1 year old. My younger brother was just born, and I was 3 years old. And my Tangol official residence was bombed by a certain political group. And the same political group tried to burn my house last year as well, so May 9th. So it is just repeating the history.
This time they swam in your house too.
Well, they have advanced little bit. Last time they burned it, so this time they just use the swimming pool. So I would say they have reformed a bit, but I think it is. I mean, if you do politics, you have to get used to it. You have to get used to face all these challenges. And if someone is doing politics thinking it's going to be like,
how did the
running for office
non-political family members react to the whole thing?
most of the kids are disappointed.
They were?
They were
threatened?
They were threatened. I mean, they were threatened. Their houses were burned, and I'm glad a couple of our members' kids, they actually passed GCA level exam tremendously well, extremely well.
Despite this crisis?
Despite the crisis, they didn't have books, they didn't have a house, they didn't have a place to stay. They were hiding for a couple of months, and they were living in their relatives' house for a couple of months. Yet, these kids managed to do their A levels really well. I mean, it shows the character.
Going out of country was a choice to you?
No.
Your father?
No.
Was that on table? Was that offered?
It was never on table. I mean, it was offered to us earlier when we were fighting against LTT as well, and we never took it. And end of the day, we believe in our people. I mean, they might get hurt, they might be arrogant, they might get violent at one point, but end of the day, we believe in them.
Getting back to India-Sri Lanka relations, one of the long-standing demands or an insistence that India does is over the implementation of the 13th Amendment. What stops your governments, successive governments, from devolving it? Situations have changed?
See, it's a matter of question to be asked. How come any executive president, from the inception of 13th Amendment, why they did not implement 13th Amendment?
Why?
And President Sirisena, he came into power promising the northern political parties that he is going to fully implement 13th Amendment, where President Vikramasinghe was the Prime Minister. They could not do it for 5 years. So the question is why? So I think firstly we need to do a comprehensive study why none of these leaders were not able to implement 13th Amendment fully.
It's not suitable to Sri Lanka's political reality and constitution?
It's not about political reality. I mean, if you look at, it was my father who had the elections in North, President Rajapaksa.
The Northern Provincial Council.
Before him, there was no elections. Sadly, after him, there is no elections. So if someone talks about 13th Amendment, I and my family or my father has a right to talk about implementing 13th Amendment, because 13th Amendment is all about provincial council. You cannot talk about land, police or any other powers without holding elections and getting people elected.
What is the use of a provincial council if it is a glorified municipality?
The same thing, the same question that we are asking. There are certain powers that there are certain powers that has been not implemented by the existing provincial councils. For example, when the Northern Provincial Council was elected, 90%, 80% of the funding returned back to the central government. Mm-hmm. They did not implement any projects. And yes, I mean, if you look at the education system, Provincial Council does a very good job. Even in Hambantota, even in my constituency. Central government runs only 17 schools, Provincial Council runs 314 schools. The question is, do we give enough funding to the provincial councils? So there are practical things practical decisions that has been taken by the central governments in order to moving forward with devolution.
Why not police and land powers? What's the challenge?
See, it's very I would say firstly we need to do a comprehensive study as to why it was not being devolved in the past and whether those reasons or situations are still existing or not, and then do evaluation based on that. So once you do that, we in fact we told this to the president as well. You first carry out a comprehensive study as to why it was not implemented and
Are
what were the
you
reasons.
for it in principle?
No, I personally believe we need to rethink and restructure local and provincial councils, and not just look at land or policy. Do have a holistic approach.
You believe there should be strengthening of provincial councils,
I personally think
even outside the ambit of the 13th Amendment.
I think we should strengthen. We should strengthen them financially, and we should
Strengthen them in other spheres.
we have to strengthen them financially and also with policy. The social welfare network. It is run by the provincial councils. It is the duty of the provincial council. So it has to have a holistic approach. And I would say land and police, those are just political statements and or political needs. But the question is what actually people need. So we need to revisit the 13th Amendment, I would say, and the local and provincial councils and restructure them in such a way that they can actually deliver more to the people in the provinces.
You give a big list of your accomplishments in the north and the east, but the Tamil parties are disappointed about your track record. They are definitely not convinced.
It's the other way around. I mean, we are disappointed about their track record. We gave them the
What could they have done?
We gave them the provincial council. We had the elections. They won the majority. They did not deliver to their people. And we invited them a couple of times to sit on table and talk about we're moving forward with devolution. They did not turn up. And even the current president invited them to come and take cabinet portfolios and help the people back in North. They did not do that. They elected President Sirisena. They voted for him, openly campaigned for them. And they did not take use of President Sirisena's administration for the benefit of the Tamil people in North.
Is Prabhakaran alive?
Well, I don't think so. I mean, from
you don't think so, or is it a matter of fact?
It's a matter of fact. It's a matter of fact he's not alive, and we have seen that on TV. We have seen enough evidence that he's not alive. But for people who wants to live out of LTT, who wants to raise funding, who wants to make more money out of diaspora, for them, they have to have a campaign.
Is it possible that some of his family members could be alive?
When you say family members, Sri Lankan, South Asian families are huge.
It's extended, yeah.
So which family
his
are you referring to?
wife, his immediate family?
From the reports we get, they're not.
How do you look at what is happening on India-Canada front, which involves diaspora with Khalistani sentiments?
If you look at the Sri Lankan diaspora, is very strong. LTT diaspora, I would say, very strong in Canada. Same thing with the Indian issue. And I personally believe if the Canadian Prime Minister believes that there have been an external intelligence organization operated in his own country, he should first have a comprehensive check on his intelligence and his national security.
So he is the one who's answerable.
He is answerable because he is claiming that a foreign intelligence agency has operated in his own country. Who is going to be responsible for that? So before anything, I personally believe he should have a thorough check on his national security and address that issue. But at the same time, we have had the same allegations. My father has got sanctions to Canada for eradicating terrorism, for eradicating LTT, and again, it's come back to Prime Minister Modi on the same allegation or similar allegation, I would say. So, Canadian Prime Minister's government has a history of.
You support India on this matter?
I support the right side, I would say.
Which is the right side?
I think it's not fair enough to blame a country just because you failed on one thing or you assume on another thing. And in this situation, I think it has to be handled more diplomatically and maturity. So this is where the Canadian Prime Minister must show his maturity.
He is immature?
I wouldn't
or
say...
do you see immaturity in his approach?
Well, if you look at
He's trying to rally the West around?
I will not put it in that way, but I would say if it was me, I wouldn't have made that statement.
He's trying to rally the West around, but that's not working.
See, it's all about domestic politics, and we should not mix domestic politics with geopolitics and another country. And it's up to individual countries to make their own decision. But if they do that, they have to respect that back on, reciprocate on us as well. They can entertain separatism, but they can't expect us to implement terrorism or separatism.
India's complaint is they encourage Khalistani separatism, which has its repercussions in India as well.
Yeah, so if Canada or any country, if they want to entertain leaders who believe in separate states, they can do that. That's their right. But they cannot expect us to implement that in our country.
Do you believe Canada pokes in matters of other countries?
They have been doing that. Sri Lanka has been a victim for a very long time.
Of Canada?
Not only Canada, lot of Western countries who are sympathized of LTT because of diaspora. I believe India is going through the same phase. So if you ask the question whether I stand by India, I say
Were
yes.
you pushed in China's lab because of this approach?
See, it's nothing to do with another country or their interests, right? It's about our people and our country. So India should look at the interests of the Indian people, and and this kind of situation, I believe, India will believe in their own.
Do you believe your friendship or your father's relationship with China, your previous government's relationship with China, caused a dent in India-Sri Lanka relations or India-Rajpaksa relations?
I don't believe so. I mean, there were certain misunderstandings. Of course, that happens. As I said, we are relatives, so relatives have misunderstandings, and it was rectified later on. And it is not the first time that has happened. It has happened in the past, during Bandaranaike's time, Jayawardena's time, Gandhi's time in India. And I think moving forward.
Do you believe India had a hand in the 2050 election that saw ousting of the Rajpaksa?
Well, there was a public belief at that time. There was a public belief. But as a political family, we believe in a campaign. And we believe that our campaign did not address the issues. And once you don't address the issues in
but
your
there were
campaign,
external forces in that election too.
I don't want to think that. But I will confirm the fact that our campaign failed to address the allegations that were pointed at us. Because it's easy to blame, right? When you lose the election, it's easy to blame so and so did this, so and so did that. But one thing we must all be aware of, whether it's India, Sri Lanka, or our region, that the nationalist leadership is not accepted by the West in our part of the world. So this is where I believe our people should stand by our leaders.
So the West detests nationalist leadership.
Looking at the history, what we have gone through, starting from 2005, I wouldn't comment before that. I can see a similar approach to India now, and trying to get the nationalist leadership out of India.
They would say we oppose illiberal governments.
They word it, no? They create a dictionary, not us. It again comes back to geopolitics, and India is becoming a superpower economically.
Do you think Sri Lanka in some way is used as a geopolitical playground by various global forces, the West, China, and India also?
Well, some people might be thinking in that way, but I think that's an advantage for us. So we need to make sure we convert
being
that.
attractive.
We need to convert that to the best interest of our people.
Half glass full. That's the way you look at it.
That's up to the leadership and make sure that that interest or that attraction to be converted to the very best interest of our people.
I come from a place, a region, Tamil Nadu, where a lot of people hate you, hate your family. What is your message to them?
Well, I mean, first get to know us because we had to fight a war, and we did with good faith for interest of our people. We had a choice. We had a choice of living with terrorism or eradicating terrorism, and we decided to eradicate. And most of our leaders lived with it, and they were taken off by terrorism, including the Indian Prime Minister. Most of our Sri Lankan senior leadership, including President Chandrika Bandaranaike, was almost assassinated, and she lost her eye. So we had a choice either to get bombed or finish the war. And we decided to finish the war for the betterment of the country, for the people. And now even the kids can come into the streets and protest against the government because there is no bombs going on in the country, where there is peace. So we had a choice, and we took that choice, and it's done, it's finished. And now it's all about moving forward. And there are a lot of similarities between India and Sri Lanka, especially Tamil Nadu and Sri Lanka. Whether it's the film industry, food, culture, religion.
Yeah.
We all go to Kovil and we all believe in God. And most of the time we visit Kataragama.
I see.
Lord Kataragama.
Your father is a fan of Tirupati.
Tirupati, and the Kataragama temple is one of the most famous temples for our family. So we visit at least once a month. And then Naluru temple, of course, in Jaffna, and Mulathu.
I see.
Vatappan temple. So those are temples that we visit very often. We are inclusive political organization and we respect each one's religions, beliefs, language they speak. And we personally believe, we have the agenda of Sri Lanka, being a Sri Lankan.
You believe every Sri Lankan is equal, irrespective of race and language in his worship?
Yes, and I believe they all should get equal opportunities as well.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rajpaksa, for talking to Thanthi TV. It was a
Thank
very
you very
interesting
much.
conversation. Thank you very much. Nandri.